you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead.
Hello.
All right, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, and that's a lot better.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, good. All right, now we're 9 minutes late. We'll get into it, okay? I apologize.
No, dude, I do the same thing as you.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy Podcast. My name is Eugene Driscoll. I'm the sole employee, last guy standing at valleyindy.org, a local news website, an online newspaper, I guess, or whatever. We just had some breaking news. Charlie, the missing bulldog from Shelton, he ran away from the Derby Shelton fireworks show back on July 3rd, has been missing for a month. I was presumed somebody stole him, or I had presumed somebody had stole him. He was found earlier today. He's alive. He's well, and he's been reunited with his loving family. So some good news coming out of the lower valley, which I know is going to make our guest happy tonight. I'm trying something different on this episode of Navel Gazing. I'm reaching out to other Connecticut podcasts because I like podcasts. I think they're a good thing. And there's a bunch of them in Connecticut that, I don't know, maybe I can bring a little exposure to. Maybe we can trade off. We can go on each other's shows, all that kind of stuff. I'll probably edit all this out because this intro has gone nowhere. But I want to bring on John Amenta from Pint O Comics. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thanks, Eugene. I appreciate having me on.
Hey, what's that dog say? Charlie is home. Yes, Charlie's safe.
That's right. My dog is very excited that Charlie made it after a month of living on the streets of Shelton. I'm assuming eating garbage.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing, man. This bulldog can survive. He looks. You know, you can see his bones and stuff like that in the picture. They found him in a ravine or something like that.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't know. I haven't actually reached out. This is all just things I've seen on social media. But John, I think you're like one of the guys in Connecticut that inspires me. I do two podcasts, right? I do this one, which is like my work one, local news site, weekly talk show type deal. And then I do a horror movie podcast with two buddies. Or Brian Spears is my buddy. Me and Joe, I don't know where we stand with each other at this point. But the three of us, do a podcast. And you're everywhere with Pint O Comics. So just tell us, you have a co-host, of course.
Oh, yeah, two.
Oh, two now. Okay, that's relatively recent then, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so go through who everybody is and how you found each other and how you conquered the Connecticut podcast world.
Okay, so Pint O Comics is myself, Sir John, who is the guy I started it with, who is a longtime friend, who I met in a comic book store many years ago. Just if you've ever, I know you guys generally don't spend time in comic stores, but they're very communal places where, like-minded people, aka nerds or geeks, get together and talk about Superman and why his underwear is on the outside of his pants and all that stuff. And I met John many years ago through there, and we had been friendly for a long time, and we ended up both joining with another old friend of ours to do a podcast about probably 4 or 5 years ago called From the Hip.
Okay.
Which was also a pop culture podcast, and we did that for about 1.5 years, 2 years maybe.
Started arguing with each other too much.
No. You know what it was? But we did argue. There's definitely some disagreements there here and there. The guy Vinny who ran it, it was his thing, moved to Florida. He got out of Connecticut, and me and John were kind of left up here, and we really enjoyed doing it. So we decided, we're going to continue. So for about 6 months, we were just getting equipment together and all that stuff, and then we decided to start Pint O Comics. And then I would say probably about very, very around that time, I had met a guy named Lloyd also at the comic book store, and we had become friends. And from like minute one that me and John put out our first podcast, he was a listener, and we had him on as a guest. And then it would just be like he'd be on as a guest a lot. Like not even a guest at that point. He was almost like, just, hey, we're going to record. You want to come over tonight? Or, whatever. And I think around 70 episodes in, we just decided to ask him if he wanted to join up permanently. So it's a nice dynamic too, because now we've got 3 guys, and if one of us can't make it, there's still someone else that could do it. We have a radio show as well on WESU in Middletown on Sunday nights at 6:30 p.m. And that's just me and John, because me and John are the only 2 that are technically DJs at the radio station. But yeah, it's just we've been going about 2+ years. We're about to hit our 100th episode of the podcast in about a month or so, and we're at about 110 radio shows.
Yeah, it's a great podcast, and the fact that you guys do a weekly radio show, I assume that gives you like the fact that okay, once a week, John and I are going to get together to do this radio show. Like you constantly record. It's not like, 'cause in my podcast, like even this one, Navel Gazing, I'll have a couple of weeks where I can't get it together and I don't get an episode out the door. But you guys are pretty religious about that. And does having the radio station set in stone once a week help that?
Yeah, but there's also secrets. So. And by the way, I know I've said this to you before, but I want to throw it out there. Your show is one of my favorites. I love you guys, and it's truly the show that I listen to that reminds me the most of our show, because you're very conversational. Even though you have horror in the title, you're not always talking just horror. We don't talk just comic books.
Right.
And you guys got a great dynamic, and I think John, Lloyd, and I have a pretty good dynamic. No, the actual honest truth is that John and I generally do the radio show every week. Due to work issues I've had with my actual job, I haven't done the radio show maybe only twice in the last 2 months. But he keeps doing it. He's got some fill-in hosts, some great people. But the kicker is that you'll notice if you listen to our show, we almost never say the episode number, because we very much like you do the same thing, where I'm assuming we'll get together and kick out 2 or 3 episodes in a night. Yeah. And if there's something topical, I'll make sure that one goes out first, but I'll also make sure we record ones, like we do a series called the Pint Movie Invitational, where you're going to come on and do one with us, where we talk. We have a guest on, and they pick a movie, and we talk about that movie. You could generally put that out whenever you want. And that's what I kind of do since the 2 years that we've been doing the show. We've never missed putting a podcast out a week, but there's a lot of times where I'll put out radio episodes as the podcast, and there's a lot of times where the podcast you hear was recorded 4 months ago.
Right. See, I like that. See, our guy Joe that I do the Mobile Horror Companion with, he's obsessed with episode numbers. He puts them in like even the title, and so we'll have it could be a little wacky, because then the show starts and we think it's episode 105, but in reality it's 110.
Right, exactly.
The other thing we did, I was just looking at our stuff the other day. I was trying to, I do a website, but I never upload the episodes to the website, because who's got time? But I was trying to catch up the other day, and I went back, and I think we did a Halloween 2017 special that didn't come out till like July, because we recorded too many. But how about when you look around the Connecticut podcast scene, because I think I discovered your podcast on Twitter, and then from there I sort of discovered all these other podcasts all over the state. I should ask, where are you guys based? Like, where's everybody live?
I live in Wallingford. John lives in Portland, and Lloyd lives in Farmington.
Parts unknown. I figured Lloyd is parts unknown, but no, sorry.
Yeah, parts. Well, he is the manster, so yeah, parts unknown.
So, and like, what are some other podcasts that you recommend people check out, all homegrown here in the state of Connecticut?
Okay. So there's a new one coming out, and this one here, I'll say right off the bat, is very, I guess, taste driven, or at least what you're gonna like. But the guy who does it is a guy named Chad Dizzle Davis, and he's a podcaster who's done a couple shows in Connecticut, and he did a show called Pass the F and Popcorn, which was like a movie review show, and he did one called Hanging with Chad. That was very good. That was a like interview show. He's doing one that's going to be coming out pretty soon called Did I Pod That? And it's him and a partner, And I mean, this is very niche, but I'm still going to listen to some of it because Chad's really good at what he does. It's him and a partner going through every episode of the late 80s, early 90s sitcom Family Matters, the Urkel show, otherwise known as.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that show lasted, I think, something like 250 episodes. So, but Chad is really entertaining, and he gets a lot of really good local stand-up comedians and good guests on. But otherwise, there's a couple brothers that we're good friends with that each have a really good show. One of them, Jerry Morgan, does a show called FOJ Live, which is a podcast, but it's a live kind of YouTube streaming show.
Mm-hmm.
And he covers everything. He covers pop culture. He has people on talking about what do you call that? Cryptozoology, like Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot, and he kind of covers a gamut of stuff. And he's a stand-up comic, so he's really funny. His brother Andrew has a show called Nomcast, which is the Netflix original movie podcast.
Oh,
and
nice.
Andrew,
okay.
Yeah, and Andrew will, whatever movies come out on Netflix originally, like the Motley Crue movie or whatever, he has a guest on, and they discuss that movie for, an hour or whatever. We've done that show 2 times now, and it's awesome. And like, again, these are all Connecticut guys.
And how did you like meet these other podcasters, and how come there's so many stand-up comics doing it?
The stand-up comic thing, I don't know. There's a guy named Pat Oates. He has a show called Pat Oates is Sad. That's very good too. I met all these people honestly through Twitter, through Facebook, Twitter, the CT Pod Squad Facebook group, and then just meeting them all in person and realizing that it's really cool to kind of, it seems like everybody has a podcast nowadays, but it's still interesting to find out, talk to you and find out how you guys do your thing and, how we do our thing and just make connections. And it's a cool community.
Yeah. And it's not like, you have your equipment, you do recordings, you edit it, and I do the same, but I don't think either of us has formal training in broadcasting or editing audio, right?
No, the only formal training I have in broadcasting is ridiculous. It's that I am a DJ at WESU in Middletown, and I took a, 2-month long, very interspersed course, like maybe 8 classes and then a test, excuse me, to do that. So no, not anything serious. And editing was literally just, when we had From the Hip, the old show, Vinny, the guy that ran it, used to edit it, and I used to bother him because we'd record like on a Wednesday, and by Thursday, if the episode wasn't out, I would give him crap because I wanted to hear it. I'm like, dude, I want to hear the show. And he would always say to me, you don't get it. And one time when I went over his house, he let me sit down and edit like maybe a 2-minute section. And it still didn't really hit me because I wasn't thinking in terms of hour-long show. When we started this show, pardon me, and I started editing, I realized it's the worst thing ever. And it's just time. It's a time suck.
And I was only bringing that up, like just because I think what's cool about these podcasts is that these are people-powered podcasts. Was the point I was trying to make. I think it's good that they're not sickly produced. Stuff everyone's grown up hearing on the radio, and the topics are just so, as you just went through a bunch of them, they're so diverse and so different,
right? Which
is really cool. Now, how much editing do you do? Pint O Comics, you do at least an hour. The radio show is live, and that's one thing, but then the actual episodes you can get on iTunes and all the other places. Do you would you do 2 hours and then cut out an hour, or do you just kind of let it run and maybe if somebody says something like totally criminally offensive, you'll edit that out. But like, how much editing are you doing?
Excuse me. A lot of ums and some pauses here and there.
Oh, wow. You get that. Yeah. See, I leave them in. I know I say all the time, but okay. So you're way more disciplined than me.
I leave them in. Like, well, let's just put it this way. If you listen to a standard episode of Pint O Comics and you said to yourself, wow, this guy John says a lot, or this guy says that a lot. Well, I said it 9 times more than what you heard.
Right.
So right. I don't want it to sound like robots talking to each other. There's got to be that element of like a real person conversation. The only time I ever really edit content out is if either something ended up being a false fact that I discovered beforehand.
Oh yeah.
Which has happened. You say
Sure.
the wrong thing, you catch it and go, that's not right. Someone does, it's only happened a couple times, but someone does say something like super out of line that you go, that might not fit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
None of us want to get fired for making these podcasts.
Well, yeah. No one wants to get fired. Nobody wants to, I'm not worried about offending people, too much. That's not in my head. But, I've got a prime example. Some friends, I won't say the show, they put out their podcast this week, and I was talking to one of them. They're not in Connecticut, and they immediately took it down and decided to re-edit it because in the beginning of the episode, they had like a kind of a long joke about one of the guys. Like, it was a joke about someone shooting one of the guys. And I mean, obviously,
right.
You know what I mean? And they just said, I can't put this out in good conscience with, what's going on. It's always going on here, unfortunately. But in the last week, you've had 3 incidences across the country. And, they just said, I don't want people to hear that. I don't want to put that out there.
Right. Yeah. I totally get that. I had something happen today. I was supposed to, maybe you've had this happen too. I was supposed to interview, it's been rescheduled, so it's all good, but I was supposed to interview David Naughton, the star of American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah, making it.
Right. It's so funny. Like when you say the guy's name, the different reactions people have. It's, it's either Dr. Pepper, Making It, or American Werewolf, but he didn't call. So I spent all day. I went into this wormhole yesterday, just looking up every interview I could find with him on YouTube, and from there I went into a John Landis vortex.
Oh yeah.
But then it turned out, I guess there was a miscommunication between his people, and he's going to call Friday instead. But I was so depressed. Have you ever had that happen where you're like something just goes completely wrong at the last second? Maybe even technically, like what's your worst podcast recording horror story?
Okay, so a lot of shows, when we have guests over to do our show, it's always local people, and they come over to my house and record with us. Part of the reason is, and we could talk to this 10 minutes ago.
Yeah,
is that and it wasn't a big deal, but we had a 10-minute snafu where we couldn't figure out how to record. And I'm always very conscientious of like the people who I'm going to have on's time. And like, so one of my biggest things is like, I'm afraid, even though we've been doing this for 2 years, to do like what we're doing right now. I'm afraid to facilitate a over the computer show because I'm afraid that we're going to end up like for 25 minutes, not being able to figure out how to do it. And then I've got to tell this person that like set their night aside, we can't do this tonight. And then it's just, and it was happening with me and you because, the audio wasn't perfect. That was good enough. And then as you're recording this, you just have in the back of your mind, oh my God, this audio sucks. Or I'm going to get killed for this. And it just kind of sucks the life out of the whole interview. I'm like overly, John particularly makes fun of me. I'm overly sensitive to like I will text people and ask them like, how did the show sound? Did it sound okay? Did it sound echoey? Did it sound reverbery? And people always tell me, no, it sounds good. But in my head, like we did a couple episodes a few weeks ago where we had Larry Dwyer, who's been on your show several times.
CT Cult Classics. Yeah,
just a great dude. And he came over on a Saturday night, and it was like, if you remember, like maybe 3 weeks ago, it was that crazy hot Saturday.
Yeah.
And Larry, if you've ever recorded with him, he's a sweater. He has his little sweat rags and everything. And usually when we record,
what's he so worried about? What do you mean he's a sweater? Is that what's he hiding?
No, he's not hiding anything. But he always has a sweat rag, and it's a joke with him. And
well, now you just gave Larry a new. I know it was Scary Larry. Now it's Sweat Rag Larry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We actually at one point.
Hold on while I tweet that.
We had actually named a sweat rag at one point. I can't remember what we called it.
Oh, this is gross.
But he came over and he recorded with us, and we always shut the AC off, and I want no noise in the house except for my dogs in the background, way in the back of the house. And it was so hot, we decided to just say F it and run a fan in the room while we recorded. And when I edited the episodes, even though it didn't sound that bad, all I could hear was the fan in my head.
Yeah. And then
there's
always some millennial out there on Facebook who'll point out the sound problem too. Freaking millennials.
Right. I absolutely agree. And I just get all tight over that stuff, and I shouldn't, because like you said, this is free entertainment for people that literally is like kind of like a part-time job that I get nothing for, but I enjoy doing it. So, but I still want to put out the best thing I can put out.
Yeah, same here. And I guess it's like, speaking of Larry and Connecticut Cult Classics, it's coming up. Their next showing at the Strand Theater right up the road in Seymour on Main Street there, Saturday, August 17th. They're showing Sleepaway Camp and Friday the 13th. I just lost it, but Friday the 13th is the other movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So you can go to Connecticut Cult Classics on the Facebook or ConnecticutCultClassics.com to buy your tickets. Are you going?
Yeah, I go to everyone. We sponsor everyone too. I love Larry. I love his shows. I love what he does for the community. I'm not even like one of the big horror guys. Like, I enjoy horror, but I'm not like we sponsor CT Horror Fest as well. And we saw you guys there last year and had a great time and guested on your show. And I'm not of that like level of, I don't have a tattoo of the tall guy or whatever from Phantasm. But that being said, Larry's shows are $10 for 2 movies. The snacks are cheap. It's a wonderful time. There's giveaways. And honestly, I'm going to sound like this is the pro Larry show, but like, the dude just works his ass off. And, I don't know. He's really cool, and he's done a really cool thing for Connecticut and for, I guess, the Valley, for where you guys are out of.
Yeah, he just, because he was doing that, there was just another one that John Marini from Ansonia did with Godzilla. Godzilla Stomps the Strand, and that was a direct. The inspiration for that was Connecticut Cult Classics, and I'm telling you, like, a couple of years ago, that theater was pretty much done. I mean, the town used to show movies on the weekends, but, no one has to go to a movie theater to go see a movie that's already out on DVD anymore. So Larry's really tapped into something by doing these sort of, fun movies that are awesome to see with a bunch of freaky geeks. But I've yet to go. I mean, the only thing I've ever done at the Strand, I saw Artie Lang a couple of months ago before he got carted off.
Oh yeah, right.
But I don't have the discipline to sit through 2 movies just because I'm an old man and I don't really leave my house.
I'm in the same boat, but I every 2 months I manage to make my way down there. If you ever go, you'll have a good time.
I gotta do it.
I found out about Larry's shows through Facebook a couple years ago. I saw an ad on Facebook, and it was right around Christmas. And my buddy Rich is a big Friday the 13th fan, and it was Friday the 13th 2 and 3 in 3D. He did it in 3D, and I got tickets for him, and I said, okay, I'll get you the ticket, and I'll go. That'll be the Christmas gift. And I thought, he'll have a great time, and I'll go and tolerate it. And then when we walked in, the first thing it made me think of was, growing up in the 80s. The movie theater was like an old school single house movie theater.
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen in 25 plus years. And then it was just the whole night. I mean, like I said, the raffle, everybody that helps Larry out is just awesome people. And I had a great time. And at the end of the night, my buddy, who was the one I got the ticket for, I think he had a good time, but he was just kind of indifferent. And I was like, I couldn't wait until the next one.
That's awesome. And then you're appearing somewhere. Are you guys going? What is it? Terrificon? Did that already happen, or is that coming up?
That's August. That's this weekend, 9th through 11th. We'll be there as press, so we're going to do interviews and all that good stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's a huge one, right? That's what started off in Trumbull, and now they're up there in Mohegan Sun. Is that like one of the biggest events in the state?
It is. I think the biggest Comic-Con maybe in the Northeast. It's awesome. The guy, Mitch Halleck, who runs it, is actually the guy who I told you before. I haven't been able to do the radio show too much because of work. Mitch has filled in for me quite a bit, so I appreciate that. And he's just a great guy, and he's putting on a really great show that's very comic book centric. A lot of these shows you go to, New York Comic-Con or San Diego Comic-Con, they're not comic book conventions. They're Hollywood conventions. You know what I mean? And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but this is the real deal. This is where, I won't bore you with names, but if you
go ahead, because somebody will know. If I don't know, somebody listening will. Go ahead.
Jim Starlin, the guy who created Thanos, his 30-year-old comic book character who is now one of the most popular movie characters, is going to be there. Tom King is going to be there. God, there's a million names I'm going to drop out of my head. Jerry Ordway, who is one of the guys that was involved in the death of Superman back in the mid to late or early 90s, is going to be there. And I mean, and that's there's a guy named Donnie Cates who is currently writing Carnage and Venom and all that popular stuff through Marvel. And I mean, that's 4 names out of literally like, and then for actors, he's going to have Billy D. Williams is going to be there. Val Kilmer is going to be there. Yeah, he's got a lot of really great talent coming to the show, and we're going to spend 3 days there, and I can't wait because every year it's just such a fantastic show.
And then you guys are also, I remember earlier in the year, you're doing a lot of stuff at breweries. Are you still planning to do stuff? Like, how did that go for you?
Yeah, you know, we had a good time, but it's funny, the brewery that we were doing, we did a live show at 2 years in a row. So we did one last summer and the summer before. Unfortunately, it was called Old Burnside up in East Hartford. They were around for, many years, and they closed down this year. So we didn't do anything there this year, but we're always on the lookout to do more stuff like that, and just get involved in more things out there. We have a YouTube channel now, Pint O Comics on YouTube. Subscribe to us, hit the bell to get notified. We're expanding into doing more content that's video only. We're doing like little video podcasts here and there. We're just, nobody here is going to get rich and famous from this, but we want to have as much fun as possible and get as much good stuff out there. And
it's cool just to meet, like when somebody says they listen or send you an email or something. It's about that and arguing with your friends. What'd you say? I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
No, I'm just amazed. Whenever, I know what our download numbers look like. I think we have a pretty decent following, but I mean, again, we're small potatoes compared to like the Joe Rogan podcast or Mark Maron or something like that. But even though I know people are listening, when someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, I listened to that episode yesterday, and when you said this, it was funny," or when Lloyd did this or John did this, I'm always taken aback by that, because in my head, there's that part of me that like it's just like we're doing this for ourselves, and I enjoy it, and I know we all enjoy it. But like when someone actually, and especially when it's someone I don't know, like you always get the feeling when like a friend or someone says something, they're just being your mom for a minute, like, "Oh, you look so handsome today," and It's like, no, I don't. When someone will come up to me, like, when we're out and they see us with the Pint O Comics shirts or something, and go, "Oh, dude, I listened to like your last 4 episodes." I'm like, wow, it's a weird feeling.
And let's talk about I guess I can't have you on this podcast and not ask you about sort of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess there's been, see, now I don't watch any of the movies. I'm sitting here trying to BS like I watch some of them, but I could feel myself. I don't know. So where's this all going? I know the last one was Endgame. What's the next? What are you looking forward to as a guy who digs the Marvel stuff?
In all honesty, and not saying I'm probably the last guy, along with John, to get enthusiastic about it. I do enjoy a lot of the Marvel movies. We were probably one of the few podcasts that reviewed Endgame and gave it a negative review, and it just didn't do it for me. But yeah, they're going to be doing. There was a kung fu character called Shang-Chi. They're going to be doing a movie about him in the next run. They're going to be doing a Blade movie with Mahershala Ali, who was, if you ever saw, he was
True Detective. He was just in, yeah.
Yeah,
third season of True Detective, yeah. And House of Cards, he had a minor role a couple of years ago, or a supporting role.
Okay, he's a fantastic actor. They have one called The Eternals, which is an old Marvel property. There's a bunch of stuff, and a Black Widow movie. So, what's wrong with Scarlett Johansson? You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong there. Hey, let me ask you,
is Blade? I remember I never knew Blade was from the comic books when those Wesley Snipes movies were first made, because I'm an ignoramus, but I did like those movies. I always thought they were entertaining and goofy and decent action movies. I guess they look slightly dated when you take a look at them now. They things move so quickly, and now they kind of look dated. But I remember them being R, because they were kind of gory. Are they talking about making these new Blade movies in the tradition of those Wesley Snipes ones, or are they going to be R-rated? I guess, or
they haven't gone that far to say that, and I don't know, because Disney, probably will keep it in the PG-13 range.
There are overlords.
Yeah, exactly. They can't allow an R-rated movie because that means that like 60% of the people out there that buy their tickets can't go see it.
Right. Yeah. It's all about the money. Well, what did you think? Let's close it out by talking about Stranger Things 3. What were your thoughts on it?
I liked it a lot. I will paraphrase the Mobile Horror Companion and say, can I say Mobile Horror Companion? I noticed you said the other podcast, so I don't want to.
Oh, no, it's fine. I mean, I like write. I never know whether I want the people who read the Valley Indy to know I do the Mobile Horror Podcast, but whatever. I can't
cut that out if you want. Yeah, so I think it was a very good show. You know what it was I'm at a point in my life where if I could sit down for 8 hours of episodes and have fun, and and that's what I did. I had fun. Were there things in it that were ridiculous? Were there things that were maybe a little bit too much? Sure, but you know what? It's entertaining, and I just it's one of those things where when I think about it, I was thinking about it the other day because I watch my share of streaming TV and stuff, and I think man, there's some shows that I watch that I just don't get that feeling I had with Stranger Things, which was okay, I watched 2 episodes and then I'm at work the next day going, hey, I can't wait to get home to watch that next episode. I
agree 100%. 100%. Yeah, it's not perfect, but there's just something about that show that is delightful. It's just it's a spring breeze.
I agree. And sometimes too, there's something about entertainment, whether it be TV or movies or even a book or something, that when you're it's Christmas time and you're watching a Christmas themed movie. Same thing with this Stranger Things. It taking place in the heat of July, and we're in July, and there's something about that syncs up to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can connect with it.
You can connect. I watch Jaws every summer because Jaws to me is a summer movie. I can connect with it right at that moment. I'm not saying I can't connect with Jaws in the coldest days of March when it's snowing out, but to me, Jaws is like that summer movie.
Do you feel at all as you're getting older that your tastes in movies or comics is changing?
Yes. Yeah.
And do you have any examples and how?
I'll give you a great example. And I don't have kids, so this isn't part of it. But I've noticed in the last few years, at the very least, probably in the last 5 or 6 years, that things that I would have enjoyed a long time ago, that maybe a little bit more, I guess, hardcore or violent, I kind of have a harder time with. Perfect example, one of my favorite movies as a young guy, when I was in my teens and through my 20s, was A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
And I still think it's a fantastic movie and I still love it. But I watched it a couple years ago for the first time in a long time, and it's just so bleak and ugly that it was just, it didn't appeal to me in the same way. And then the other night, as a matter of fact, I threw in, I hadn't seen it in a long time, Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects, which I loved when I was in my late 20s, early 30s when it came out. And I still think it was a great movie, but the stuff in that movie that's particularly hard was even more particularly hard to watch now. Because I'm at a point in my life where I'm in my, I'm 43 years old, and I'm sure just like you, I see enough of this crap in real life that I don't know, there's just not that escapism element of some of the violence isn't there anymore.
And I wonder, is that us getting, because I feel that, I am on that same train. I feel 100% the same way. And I can't figure out, is it because I'm getting older? Is it because of everything that's happened, say, in the last 17 years in terms of, seeing so much violence around us? Or I can't figure out. I put it on Facebook once and somebody just told me that it's because I'm losing my testosterone. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
I'm not even kidding with you when you say that. I've thought that to myself, because there's been other things again, getting older. I find my empathy for people and situations is much more on point and higher than it's ever been. Not to get too in depth with it, but my wife went through cancer a few years ago and she's fine now.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, no, she's good. She's good. But I wonder if that experience and getting older has made me just a different person. And you know, and I don't want to get too heavy on everything, but like it works its way into pop culture and entertainment. You know, again, there were things that I would have watched. I still love like a good slasher movie and stuff like that because they're escapism. But when you get closer to the real things, you know, Devil's Rejects can almost be considered real because it's basically just like a psychotic home invasion / you know what I mean? Like,
yes, yeah, yeah.
Like, and there's a lot of bad stuff that goes on in there. Clockwork Orange is about, you know, this kid that's just not right, and he basically lives for violence and lives for you know, denigration and stuff. And you know, when I was a kid, I guess I saw that with different eyes. And yeah, no, I definitely feel as I get older,
it's not exciting anymore. I was debating whether to ask David Naughton, you know, like I said, I was supposed to interview him. It's going to happen Friday, because I went back and watched American Werewolf in London, and that was a movie like I loved as a kid. You know, it was a dare to sit through it, and it was exhilarating, and it was hilarious. It's still a great movie. I think it's almost it's so completely original is probably what I like about it the most, because it's a comedy, it's a horror movie, it's a love story, it's a buddy movie, it's a really unique movie. But I had forgotten like the dream sequence and all that. Like I'm like, whoa, this is too much. This isn't just an R. This is a hard R, and I don't know if that would be made today. And I was gonna, but then I don't want to, you know, given all that's going on in the world, I don't know if I wanted to drag that into the conversation with David Naughton. But I totally get where you are. It's so funny. I hear a train in the background. Whenever I would record this in Ansonia, every single time at noon, we have a train go by the Ansonia office. So look at that. Oh yeah. I feel like I'm home.
I'm right near the train station in Wallingford. So. Oh,
nice. All right, John. So where can people find Pint O Comics to listen to you guys?
Okay, you could go to Apple Podcasts or basically every podcatching app out there. Go to iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify. You can check us out, Pint O Comics. It's Pint O Comics. Go to www.pintocomics.com. We are very bad with the website in terms of getting articles and stuff up. I apologize for that, but we're trying to get better. Go to YouTube, look up Pint O Comics, and then please subscribe to us and ring the little bell. And then every time we put out a new video, which is usually once or twice a week, you will get a notification that came out. On Sunday nights at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, you can go to wesufm.org, and you can go to 88.1 FM on your terrestrial radio if you want. And for an hour, you could hear me and John, or John and whoever the guest host is. That show is much more, I guess the podcast is more topical conversation, and the radio show is usually more of an interview show. We have authors on, artists, musicians, whatever. We have people on and just talk to them. We had, you know, you guys on last year.
That was awesome.
Last year,
it was so much fun to do that.
Yeah, we had a great time with you guys.
And then you're on Facebook and Twitter, of course. People want to. Oh yeah,
Twitter, at Pint O Comics, and Instagram Pint_O_Comics.
All right, hey John, thanks so much for all you do, for inspiring me, and for coming on this podcast.
Well, no, Eugene, seriously, I love you guys, and I love your mystery unnamed show that we won't talk about.
All right.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. For the info we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur, yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the opens each day, yeah. Online clickbait a prurient way, yeah. It's free information here to stay, yeah. Not even hookers give it away, yeah. Advertising dinosaur. We'll ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur. Deadlines, bylines, pictures too. An editorial comment for a buck or two. Fire down the block, the murder next door. And now we wonder what it's all for. Social media coming free to you, funny pages, the mayor's wages, criminal seats, corruption schemes, ink state wretches asking tough questions. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. The presses are running all through the night. We're printing the truth with all of our might. We're platform agnostics, got that interweb too. Buy an ad, see what we can do. We still have subscribers, still have our fans. We're here every day, so give us a chance or we'll make an art stand. Just hold us in your hand and we'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur.